So welcome, welcome to today's session on USR. A few admin points here. Last thing we have for this month will be next week. Chief Jasinski will give us a tag update on what's going on at HRC. Those are pretty good because it kind of gives us a quick and dirty of what's going on in the HR world, from his perspective as a tag senior warrant officer advisor. So good thing for all of you to kind of, link up again, especially for your soldiers, your officers, anyone that's interested in knowing what's going on at HRC. So on the 31st, 13:30, we'll hold that session. We're also looking for anyone that would like to come on and do a either OPD or a training session like Ray is doing today. You're welcome to send me a note and we'll hook you up and you'll select the date, and time is normally 13:30 because that's when we can get the majority of the people. We're going to try to get a session done for the Germany folks to include folks that are deployed, and then one for Korea. But that's we'll have to work on that one. So let me introduce our host for today is Ray Rijkse. He's from 4ID. He has graciously agreed to give a second part of his USR training. And so I am going to be flipping the slides from this end, and Ray's going to be doing all the talking. If you have questions as this goes along, if you have a microphone, please identify yourself. If you don't have a microphone, just type in the question on the text box on the right side, and then we will stop as needed to kind of answer your question. This is like a round table, so this is not a briefing style type of thing. Anytime you have a question or something you want to bring up as part of the training session, please do so. So without further ado, because this is not my show, it's Ray's show. Ray, over to you, my friend.
Sir, thank you for your time, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the session. Like Chief Bencourt stated, this is a roundtable discussion. There's a lot of slides. There's 56 slides. I'm not going to go through every single slide in detail. Some of these have already been previously taught for the enlisted portion. There's a lot of information here. We've updated some of the information. If you were not present during the enlisted piece and you do have questions, please don't hesitate to slow me down or just identify yourself and ask your question accordingly, and then we can try to answer them to the best of our ability. So with that said, I will tell you that over the last year, I've taken over the strength management team here at 4th Infantry Division. Walked into, I should be honestly blunt in saying that a broke section, and turned it around over time. Communicated with a lot of my AG counterparts and rebuilt this section to where we are now, to where it's really working exceptionally well. Shannon Tyus has contributed a lot with his brigade strength management module, which I previously taught, and so we've implemented a lot of different tools and techniques to make this a more feasible process. So with that said, I'll go ahead and start going through the slide deck. If I go too fast, please slow me down, ask whatever questions you got to ask. Please note that this is the perspective from a division level. So if you're at the Corps, a lot of this stuff is also applicable to you. If you're at the brigade, this will give you insight on how we manage at the higher headquarters. Some of the products that you receive for strength management, or some of the processes that you are involved with, are specific to your brigade or tailored to your brigade. But if you are confused by how things work or what systems you need access to make your process better, please let us know. Chief, next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the business rules that we have created particularly for the enlisted side, for 4th ID, and I'll let you kind of read this to yourself. The bottom line up front is under Senior Command Manning. Our CG is triple-hatted. He has a one-star headquarter in Europe. He is the Senior Mission Commander for Fort Carson, and he is the 4th Infantry Division Commander as well. So we established some business rules that kind of help brigades identify how we do it at our level, what the CG's and the DCSM's expectations are, and hold people accountable so that we're all on the same sheet of music. We had to do this because a lot of drug deals were being done between brigade, battalion CSMs, and brigade commanders, battalion commanders. And so we want to make sure that everybody's treated equal. We want to enforce the active component manning guidance, transition their mindset from ARFIGEN to sustainable readiness model, and then making sure that we do the equitable distribution in a mannerism that's conducive to the business rules established by HRC. So pending your questions, we'll go to the next slide. This slide here kind of gives you the ARFIGEN to SRM timeline to show you what we did in the 1980s, 1990s to when we went to war, and then what the expectation is now. Next slide, please. Go ahead. So I'm not sure if many of you at the brigade level have received the SRM briefs, but the next couple of slides are going to explain the difference between ARFIGEN, SRM, what the SRM model looks like, and then try to implement the current active component manning guidance as well. So this slide will here kind of give you the manning expectations from HRC, your account managers, your branch managers, down to your strength managers at the corps and division level, and then how that trickles down to you. And if you all need a copy of this slide deck, please contact myself or Chief Betancourt. We'll make sure you have this. This is not something that we just simply stole from somebody. Some of these slides we had to kind of figure things out and develop them as we went along. But hopefully this will give you the answers that you seek. So as you know, for the non-deployables, non-availables, we're now MERCO 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that transition has already happened in the system, and I'm going to come back to that subject because that impacts how we man the force in DERZA, Net USR, and how we request personnel. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, here's your active component manning guidance SITREP. The biggest thing is, if you look at the last couple pages of the manning guidance, it will identify under the sustainable readiness process on what your DMSLs look like according to the model, whether you're urgent, rotational, or essential force. That's important because it'll identify what your target is. Now that is an aggregate baseline target. You still have to peel the onion back and go further and identify by MOS or by AOC on what the Army inventory looks like, what your PMAT is, and what your fill plan should be. Next slide, please. So this data was given to us by HQ8AG1. This is the updated slide as it stands as of today. Now for 4th Infantry Division, we are a rotational force filled at 90%. For some of you who have been in the Army long enough to understand how it was back in the 90s, this is somewhat similar to how we had it then. But one thing I will tell you, the commanders are very resistant to hear is the term aggregate. And you have to understand that under the current SRM model, we are filled to your rotation, whether you're urgent, rotational, or essential, by aggregate. So when it says planned at 95, that's 95% aggregate. I cannot stress that enough. Commanders will not want to hear that. They're going to resist you on that. They'll give you all kinds of reasons. The second component of that is under senior command manning, senior commander manning, your commander, if he or she has that that authority, it's not just by your division. So you have to look at your installation and include SEM when you're looking at your targets, your projections, and what you currently have in your inventory. Additionally, the active component manning guidance specifically states that commanders have the responsibility to clean their own ranks, if you will. And basically what that means is if you are, let's say, 95%, but your deployability rate is down to 75%, that pool of non-deployable personnel under ARFIGEN, we used to transition them into a different UIC, a different organization, and then fill them up, right? And then we would send them out the door at hopefully no more than 105% complete mission, come back, reset, and then you had that readiness cliff. So under SRM, we're trying to eliminate that readiness cliff and have a constant state of readiness. And so the tricky part there is helping commanders understand that their non-deployable personnel are part of their force. They're part of their inventory. So what they have is what they got. And if they don't manage their non-deployables or their troublemakers in a way where they clean their ranks, they sanitize them, they get rid of them, they push them out the army if they need to, what they have is what they got. Okay, so deployable, non-deployable, that's it. Next slide, please. So this kind of gives you the end state, the so what. And what I like to do now is fast forward to the officer side, because the next couple of slides are very enlisted heavy. But I'd like to forward to the MIR, the 17-0, or your 2 cycles of MIR. So I'm sorry. So before I go through the MIR, we created this slide because we wanted to show you what the SRM would look like under an actual scope. So we took the 4th Infantry Division long-range training calendar, our MIR manning cycles, our PCS cycles for the enlisted personnel, our inventory at that time, and then try to show a picture of what SRM would look like. And this is the product that we developed. Now, before I kind of go into this, understand that the moment you put P ratings on this, the classification of this slide will change to secret. Okay, so you notice that there's no P ratings on this slide, just so everybody's comfortable with that. So here, if you look at the 4th Infantry Division on the left, we show you the units, we show you what their current inventory looks like, what at that time their percentages were, and then as you look to the right, you'll see the manning cycles by fiscal year, and then you'll see where their CTC rotations are and some of their training events. The green flags are the change of command icons for their brigade commanders. That's important because that changes them from mission set to the prepare phase. Now under the SRM model, they're only going to be in a prepare phase for no more than 90 days. So the moment that brigade commander changes his or her command, they'll be in a prepare phase for about 90 days, and then the intent is for them to immediately transition back into a constant state of readiness. So the tricky part is whether or not that change of command takes place during an actual rotation. And that's where you're going to have to come in with HQDAG1 and kind of figure out if that has any kind of bearing or shift in your SRM model. But this is what it looks like for us as of 3 months ago. And I would say try your best, if you are at a G1 or if you're at a Brigade 1, try to articulate to your commanders on what they look like or how they see themselves under SRM. This is a product that works for us. We briefed this to our division commander in front of the brigade commanders, and once they saw this, the light bulb kind of went on and they got it. Do we have any questions on this? Okay, no questions. We'll go on to the next slide. And so here's the kind of the key manning factors when we try to take it in combination between HRC, what's going on at Fort Carson, and how we've evolved from ARFIGEN to SRM. And I'll let you guys read these slides on your own. It's a lot of information. But if any time you have questions, I think we kind of have this figured out. So if you're still trying to develop your product for your organization, or if you're trying to work with your G1, your higher headquarters, and you haven't quite figured this out yet, please give me a call afterwards or sometime next week, and we can talk it through. And then if we can go on to the next couple slide decks, I'd like to take you to the Mission Essential Requirements MIR. Okay, so this is an account manager's brief on their overview on what they do with their MIR at their level. The biggest takeaway, so you don't have to read every single word in this slide, is that HRC OPMD will take your inventory and they will create a preliminary scrub, if you will, for your organization. Typically, it goes down to the core headquarters, down to the divisions. And so the division G1s will get it, and this is what it will look like. If you go back, go forward 2 slides, please. So this is basically what that looks like. And so this slide will tell you how to fill that out. Okay, so here you go. This is an example of that MIR. So on the right-hand side in red, you'll see the preliminary scrub conducted by your OPMD account manager. Basically, they will take your inventory, scrub it, and take a look at what you need. Now remember, you have to think target. Okay, so for 4th Infantry Division, you'll see that we are rotational force. We're filled at 95%. That shows what we're authorized and what we're projected. And based on those projections, they will go in and build us by AOC what they think we need to get filled. The 4th Infantry Division G1 then will receive it and will peel that onion back a little bit further. This is where we have to go into TOPMIS 2 and really go line by line for the entire division and scrub it and re-verify. Here's what's important. HRC only knows what they have in their inventory as of time now. They know what the Army looks like, but they don't specifically know the intricacies of every officer going on within your brigades or within the division. So they need our feedback. We peel this back, we separate it by brigade, and we send it to the brigade, and we ask them, hey, brigades, basically what we need you to do is look in your inventory and tell me if the preliminary scrub meets your intent. If there's an officer that's planning on dropping a UQR, a refrat, a retirement, and it hasn't hit the system yet, or he or she has not communicated that to HRC yet, you want to go ahead and put that on the MIR, particularly if that exit strategy falls within that manning cycle. So officers have 2 manning cycles, whereas enlisted have 4. For example, you have a 1701, and then you have a 1702. Your 1701 starts from October 1st and goes through March, the end of March, March 30th. And your 1702 starts from April 1st and goes to the last date of September. So those are your 2 window cycles, and it goes very quick. All right. So the moment you finish scrubbing and submitting and processing your 1701, within the next month or 2, you're going to receive the calendar for the 1702. So you kind of have to stay on top of this. So the expectation, again, is for the brigades to scrub it. They'll notify in column November what the unit wants to keep and what they want to delete. If they delete it, then there's no further additional information required. If they want to keep it, then we need to justify who's the incumbent, what position number do they have, and what's the reason why we need to keep that. Okay. Now, if there's an additional one that you want to add to it, it goes on the bottom here as you see the additions block in that chart. All right. So if you have, for example, an officer you know is going to submit a retirement or short-term retirement, and that retirement date will fall within that window, you want to go ahead and put it on there. Okay. So once the brigades fill that out, send it back to the G1s. The G1s will scrub it, re-scrub it, and re-verify it. Now, it's not as simple as just collecting, consolidating, and submitting back to higher headquarters. The G1s have to look at the MIR, and then have to scrub it against the field grade slate. Okay, so there's various slating here that the G1s do that the brigades most likely don't have too much visibility on. The field grade slate will also include by name requests from the CG, the Chief of Staff, from brigade commanders. The G1, the Chief of Staff, will fly out to CGSC and conduct interviews with students. They will come back, inform the strength management team on which officers they have interviewed, which ones they're going to submit a BNR on, and then also which officers are potentially coming here, which field grade officers or lieutenant colonels are coming to your formation that are PCSing in lieu of retirement. All that is important to know. You kind of have to keep all that in your pot and keep up with that, because that's going to impact your MIR. If you mess up on that, if you misfire, I will tell you that in the end how that's going to impact you. So once we have consolidated all that information, we send it back to our higher headquarters, and eventually the core headquarters will consolidate it for all the divisions and send it back to OPMD. The next thing the OPMD does, they'll confirm the receipt, that your account manager will contact the G1 strength management team and the G1 actual and say, hey, we've received your MIR. We're going to go ahead and scrub it. If they have any questions, they have about a week and a half to kind of ask any additional questions or re-verify what you've submitted. After that, it goes through a distribution conference. This is a bidding process. This is where all the other division your division accounts managers and all your separates will come together collectively and bid against what's in the Army inventory. Okay, now I'll give you an example. Your loggy captains, for example, right? These guys, their inventory is a little bit above 98%. I want to say 98.3% currently Army inventory. But then if you consider the delay of Captain's Career Course and what's coming out of his sessions, the inventory for the divisions or for FORSCOM is only set, your target is only set for them at about 78 to 83%. That has a significant impact for your sustainment brigade commanders. Okay, so that tells you that there's officers that are going to be waiting in queue for command, that brigade commanders are going to be really screaming for their log officers that they're typically not going to get. If the G1s don't articulate that to the brigades and explain to them, listen, even though your authorization document, your MTO, may say that you're authorized XYZ, right? Let's say you're authorized 100, and your target, because you're a rotational force under the sustainable readiness process, sets you at 95%, right? The inventory, your target is only set at 78. So if you're at 78 for 78, that equates to 100% based on Army inventory, and that's kind of how the calculations work there. So the next step of the MER is once the bidding process is complete, then we go through a process called course corrections. All right, so OPMD bidding process, the distribution process has determined what they can and what they cannot give the divisions based on the Army inventory and based on priority of fill. For example, Korea right now is priority number 1, Fort Hood is priority number 2, 4th Infantry Division extremely healthy, so we're priority number 7. Okay, why is that important? Because if I'm getting an officer, for example, that top row where you see the J5, which is a captain, non-branch qualified, 25 alphas coming to me. If I know that I'm priority number 7, I know that through the distribution process, I'm not going to get this guy at the beginning of the MER. Okay, so you got to be realistic with your report dates and when you need the guy here. Know which order of march you are within the inventory. The G1s, the core G1s will receive the course corrections. They'll send it down to the divisions. We receive it, we scrub it against what we originally submitted and try to identify what we're not getting. The next thing we do then is send it back to the brigades and say, listen, brigade, you're getting officers XYZ this past the bidding process. Officers XYZs you're not going to get because it did not pass the bidding process. You're not always going to get a reason why you're not going to get this officer. So your strength manager just has to articulate why and why not. Typically, we will know what the Army inventory looks like and some of the reasons why. Okay, so the course corrections will give you about a 2-week window to come back and reclama if you're not getting a certain set of skills. Okay, the 420 alphas was a prime example. At some point here very recently, we were short 61 in the inventory. OPMD communicated during the course corrections process and said, hey, each division is not going to get their CW3 for their cabs. They're not going to fill the DeVardys. They're not going to get their HROB, HR techs either. So we know that each division is going to be 3 under. Then if there's any other issues, that is something that we're going to have to articulate on the MER. So if I have a warrant officer that I know is going through an MEB and I need to T-code that individual's YMAF code with the branch manager, I need to know exactly when I'm losing that officer. Because if I miss the cue on that, then, and if I don't articulate that on the MER, it'll go through the bidding process, I won't get my bid, and if I catch the mistake, if I'm smart enough to catch the mistake during the course corrections process, it goes back to HRC for yet another bid, okay, a last go around, if you will, and you may or may not come out on top. Most of the time you won't, because if it wasn't a priority to your commander on the MER, you're sending the message to OPMD that it wasn't really a priority for you then. It's a nice to have, but not a need, if everybody understands what I'm saying. So you kind of have to understand what the inventory is, okay? Any questions so far? No questions. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so one way you can use the systems to build your MER is to go into the TOPMIS strength screen. Okay, so here on the left-hand side, you can load your TOPMIS, go to select detailed strength reports, and remember to go by control grade. Control grade is important because if you have a lieutenant promotable, his control grade, his control branch is going to be as a captain, and same thing for the other ranks. For your strength managers, that's important because we know that first lieutenants in your inventory, if they're promotable or if they're seasoned, their next step is the captain's career course. I know that captain branch qualified or captain Q, what you see here on the screen, are in queue for CGSC. They're going to ILE. They're not going to stay in your inventory for the standard default 36 months. So you just kind of have to keep an eye on who's promotable, who's not, what their control grades are. And then once you go to your detailed strength report by control grade, you can click on your DMSL or use your ARP MAO. For us, it's CC for Carson, Colorado, and look at your entire installation inventory. Select your assigned AOC, and then look at what you have aggregate. One thing you can do is look at your current slide. So you see how it has control grade, authorized, projected, current. And if you look at your current total and you click on that number, it'll open up a new sheet for you and give you your current residence by name. Now, an important piece there within is the YMAF reason codes. If you look at the reason codes, if you're doing this routinely, you'll understand what those reason codes are. But some of them, you can find out exactly what's going on with each one of your residents. So I know off the top of my head that a reason code hotel is a flag. The officer's flag is under investigation or messed up, and the officer can't move because he's not movable. Okay, if he has a reason code of N November, I know that the officer's by default a one-time non-select for promotion, and he's not going to move. He's going to remain in place until the results of the next board. If there's a reason code of Sierra, for example, I know that that individual officer is on cue for school and PME, whether it's Click 3, IGSC, or whatever. If the officer doesn't have an RFO yet, he's pending RFO. He's going to school. You can go back into your file, look under the YMAV notes. I think it's block 30 or 31, and then if you click on that, it'll show you the script on what your branch manager is tracking for that individual officer. That is important because as you build your MER, you can identify which soldiers are planning to drop a UQR refrad, have dropped their retirement paperwork, when they're leaving, what their PLOS is, what their YMAPs are, if they're going to school. You can kind of peel the onion back. That'll help you out because what you don't want to do is send that down to the units and expect them to feed you the information. The expectation is that Brigade S1s, you have the system capability to touch that data and create your spreadsheets, create your MER, and manage your strength within your brigades. You shouldn't have to go down further than the Brigade S1. Any questions so far? No questions. Okay, great. So once you've peeled that onion back, you've identified who your residents are, who is applicable for PLOS within that window, and you go ahead and build your MER and send it up to the G1. Don't stop there though. I would recommend you schedule some time with your strength manager, go up to your G1, sit down with them, do a line-by-line scrub, go old school, line by line. Scrub with them, explain to your G1 why it is necessary for you to have that individual, particularly if you're asking for additional skills. Next slide, please. Okay, during the last brief, I talked about our weapon systems. I'm not going to go too much into this. We know that these are our weapon systems that we use a lot. You got to rely particularly on TOPMIS 2 and I will tell you that in order for you to be extremely successful, whether you're in a brigade or a G1, you have to build relationships. You got to build relationships with your staff. You got to build relationship with your higher headquarters, and you have to have a constant chain of communication, an open communication with your accounts managers. If you're at the G1, the best way to do that is to get on a plane, go TDY, and go visit HRC as frequently as possible. Make it quarterly. The 4ID did that. We built some beautiful relationships with our branch managers, particularly our accounts managers. And once those relationships were built, it helped us get what we need, and those people would fight for you. Okay, so I cannot beat that up enough. You got to build those relationships. This is where your people skills come in. If you are that HR tech or that senior human resources sergeant that is overly aggressive and people can't come to you because you're not approachable, you probably don't want to be in the business of strength management, because you have to have the ability to communicate with people. The second thing is you got to kind of keep track of your PCSs in lieu of retirement. This is extremely challenging for 4th Infantry Division because a lot of people want to come to Fort Carson just on the premise of retirement. And many of these people will arrive to the installation and not tell you why they PCSed. Your branch manager may or may not know that information, but there will be people that come to your location, either have that retirement packet already waiting, or they have full intentions on dropping it within 6 months of arrival. So try to get ahead of that. And then also try to track your arrivals, particularly for those who have an individual dwell time reset at 0, and those that are arriving to your installations with Merc code 3 Bravos. This has been a challenge for us recently because we're getting a lot of people from Korea, and 4th Infantry Division is an extremely busy division. I got several brigades right now that have forces deployed forward. We're going through a large set of CTC rotations, and our Divardi is standing up. So there's just a lot going on. I have an HR company that has forces forward right now, and so they have an enduring requirement. So as people come from Korea with reset dwells, these are people that I got to be careful where I place them, because if they're going out the door within the next 6 months, now I may be creating a lot of problems for that leadership. So try to keep that in mind. Recently I sent a note to my brigades. I tried to show them the difference between an MTO authorization, and a PMAD. For you SMEs, what you can do is go into WebPAM, download your PMAD, go into FMS Web, download your MTO, and try to do a comparison on what your current target is versus what your authorizations are. You got to be careful there, because some of your targets could actually be higher than your authorization, or they could be lower. So we just want to make sure that what we articulate to our commanders is what the field plan is for HRC. Share your data as frequently as possible. Try not to be that person that hoards the information. The more you share with them, the better they become. And then educate your leaders on what the manning document really is. Your Divardis are exceptional. Many of them are still standing up. I recently spoke with Chief John Jasinski regarding the DMSL status of the Divardis. The discussion through the G1 lanes have been completely disapproved. They are not entertaining Divardi obtaining their own DMSL, so they're going to remain under your HHBNs. That's important for you, because as you look at your HHBN inventory, you have to separate your Divardis by UIC and try to, the best way possible, identify what each inventory looks like, Divardi versus HHBN. Now, not every Divardi is structured, task organized the same way. Some divisions have their field artillery battalions underneath their Divardi headquarters. We do not. So that's important when you're building your MUR, you're requesting personnel. And then slates. Understand that Division G1s have a responsibility to the CG for company command slates, field grade slates, and then of course you got to maintain your individual slates like AG slating. And then balance that off with your HROCs and try to implement some form of talent management. Now, I know that's a sore subject for a lot of you because talent management is defined differently contingent on who your commander is. My general officer came from G3 readiness, so his insight or his expectation of talent management may differ that from 1st Cav Division, for example. So you just got to be able to articulate that to the brigade commanders and re-echo or restate the commander's intent on talent management versus slating. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's go through the weapon system slide deck real quick, Chief, if you will. So EDAS. This is a class that I previously gave. I'll give you the bottom line up front on this one. This is a screenshot of the MQ screen in EDAS. This is how we look at ourselves in our inventory, what we have by DMSL. Okay, and so I've kind of depicted on how you can look at that. The biggest thing here is if you look at the bottom portion here, it shows you your target. I can't stress enough to the brigades on looking at their targets versus their authorizations. Exactly. Thanks for showing that, Chief. And so I've showed you in TOPMIS where you can look at your targets, and I recently discovered, and this you guys got to pay close attention to this. Let's take the 53 alphas for example. 53 alphas have recently transitioned to 26 alphas. There was no notification given to us by OPMD that transition had already occurred in the system. It was a premature transition. So when you looked at your 53 alpha population in TOPMIS 2, they disappeared. It's blank. All right. So for us, for example, our target became 0. I didn't know that the 26 alphas were now actively live. They weren't supposed to be filled until October of 2017 because that's when their sessions transitions from 53 to 26. And so if you look at your target and your target suddenly changes, your targets are loaded by HQDA and force management semi-annually. So when you look at EDAS and you look at your targets, that will change. It will change based on the inventory. It will change based on your active component manning guidance, and it will change based on your PMADs approved by DAG357. So just pay close attention to it. Don't get too wrapped up on your authorized versus what you will have. And also consider that when you're looking at your target and your inventory, your residents, remember to keep in mind you got to manage them by control grade because that will include your promotables. Next slide, please. Okay, BSM2 is a beautiful product. I cannot beat this enough. Recently, we've transitioned now that the entire division is operational on BSM2. We've taken it one step further, and we are using BSM2 and our HR operating systems during net USR turn-in. This has become extremely important because net USR turn-in includes all the division by battalion, by brigade. So as battalions are turning in their net USR shortages, we're looking at how their MOS soft checking their skills matches. We're looking at their deployable percentages, we're looking at their inventory, we're looking at everything. And so BSM2 is a quick snapshot to give you the so what by battalion for each brigade, by rank and MOS, and even for the officers. What I recently did was if you go to the officer tab and the warrant officer tab in BSM2 and you look at their slates and you print that off, the cool thing is it'll show you who's being double or triple slotted. So I recently discovered that one of my brigades is triple slotting officers in the same paragraph and line number, right? And so if you look at the aggregate inventory, and based on what your division's mission is, for 4th Infantry Division, we have an MCE requirement for EUCOM in Germany. That's an enduring mission right now through the fiscal year 17. So I need officers to participate in that. It's a 4 to 6 month TDY. We have so much going on that when I'm looking at the officer inventory, if one brigade is heavy, I may need them in another brigade. Whether I'm reassigning them or attaching them outside of the brigade, ultimately it's to meet the commander's intent. And with net USR, I'm able to identify where some of their vacancies are, or whether the brigade has it as a whole, and that battalion just needs to get with their brigade and make it a shortage or an MOS concern versus an actual legitimate MOS shortage. Because if the brigade exceeds 95% of that MOS, but that battalion is just low, that there's an indication that the brigade is just not doing equitable distribution. And so we advise the battalions then, like, hey, you need to talk to your brigade, remove that off of your DERZE as an MOS shortage. Don't embarrass your commander. This is something that your brigade can fix internally. Any questions there? So I'm keeping track of my time. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. This is a lot of information. So Chief, let's fast forward to the end, and then I'll close it out with comments from you. Everybody knows FMS Web, Web EDAS. The last thing I can tell you, Chief, we can go ahead to the bottom to the question screen, is the biggest challenge that we have, whether it's officer assignments, officer strength management, or enlisted strength management. Let's just talk about total picture here, is getting the S1s involved in net USR. That used to be something that was just an expectation, a standard, right? But what I'm seeing for 4th Infantry Division is that's not typically happening. So my expectation is that either the HR Tech or the S1 NCOIC at the brigades have a DERZE account, right? They have access to SIPR and net USR, and that they are present while each one of their battalions are turning in USR to their USR division USR officer. Many of mine do not. We recently had a conference where my G1 Sergeant Major asked, hey, how many of you have access to SIPR and have an account, a net USR account, and have an account in DERZE? And only one hand went up, and it was a specialist. And so I'm looking at our senior leaders. I'm looking at our chiefs, and I'm looking at our NCOICs within our inventory and ask the hard question, what are you doing to make yourself relevant? If you're not involved in net USR, if you're not involved in strength management, then how are you effectively communicating to your commander what you are doing to arm them with the right set of people, with the right set of skills at the right time in the right place? And if your people are not involved in that, I would say align the efforts. Let's all talk from the same sheet of music, and let's get them back into that fight. Because right now, I don't think that we are doing that effectively. That's a challenge that I'm having at 4ID. That's a problem. The solution is that right now we are forcing each battalion S1 to go through the QA/QC process here at Division. We do a preliminary scrub, a manning scrub with each of the brigade S1s, and then we are actively present during the USR turn-in period, and we go line by line with each battalion to QA/QC their DERZE transactions to make sure that they're slotting in DERZE and that USR is correct, that they're soft checking their MOS skills match for those that are E6s filling in their E7 positions that will bump up the P level and improve the senior grade inventory. We're checking their non-deployables. We're making sure that officer shortages are addressed accordingly. We're openly communicating with HRC, whether it's OPMD or EPMD, whenever an MOS concern comes up. We do it right there on the spot. And what I can't fix there during USR time, we take back over the next week and a half before we start the next cycle. And then we actively engage HRC on our manning requirements or concerns. So that's USR for us in a nutshell. That's how we man our officers. We've previously discussed on the enlisted side of the house. If some of you were not present during that block of instruction, I'm more than happy to do it again. But I will tell you that between BSM2, having the relationships with OPMD, EPMD, and actively communicating with my higher headquarters, 4th Infantry Division has done a phenomenal job in cleaning up our shortages, effectively and accurately reporting manning to our higher headquarters, and making sure that my commander has all the tools at his disposal to accomplish their mission. So with that, I'm going to close this back out to Chief Betancourt. I thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you. We have a lot of products here, so if there's something you want me to share with you or something that you'd like to peel the onion back a little bit further and go deeper into, please give me a call, and then and that's it from 4ID.
Hey Ray, thank you so much. This has been fantastic, my friend. Hey, and listening to what you're saying, I mean, I talked with some of our senior warrants the other day, and we were talking about evaluations, and we are going to develop a checklist to help those that have never done senior rater profile, kind of guide them through the process so they don't get lost in the bubble. Because sometimes we just kind of lose. I mean, sometimes it's very easy to lose control on if you're doing geo level senior rater profile management. So I think if we could develop something for USR that is a little checklist, because all those last things you said, I mean, you kind of went line by line on everything that we should be doing as a strength manager. If we can develop a checklist that kind of goes step by step to include, the URLs for how to get access to webcam and all that cool stuff. We can provide that to the one shops, and as new people come in and take over as strength managers, at least they have something they can guide themselves to start the process. Because it takes some time to make something a habit. And since this occurs every single month, if you see it on a checklist, then it's easy to just go, on the step by step and say, well, first I got to do this, then I got to do this, I got to make sure that I put my information on the sheet, got to get with HRC, all those cool things that you talked about. So if you are willing and you have the time, I'm asking if you could put something together, a very simple, easy checklist that kind of runs down from top to bottom. From the moment I took over as a strength manager, these are the things that I need to go through every time I have to do USR. And oh, by the way, these are the things I have to do throughout the weeks leading to the next USR. And oh, by the way, these are the things I have to do. Once HRC tells me, no, I'm not going to give you all these people, it's on you to manage, your population. And
Chief,
I think,
you hit the hammer on the nail, and I was just talking about a checklist with Lieutenant Colonel Vickery, my CBURN USR officer, specifically about a checklist that we can go line by line. Not only that, but also a USR class
right,
that shows down to battalion level how to do the personnel portion. Because what I'm seeing, Chief, is that a lot of the S1s, because they're not involving themselves in USR, we leave it to these lieutenants, these 74 Alpha lieutenants, to do the personnel portion in that USR, and often they miss the target. So what our intent this USR cycle, starting next week, is to create a checklist from preliminary USR scrub to USR turn-in on what the expectation is line by line, and then also creating a net USR class that shows S1s who have been out of this fight for so long on what the expectation is, what they need to do with the personnel portion in net USR. So I should
that's
have that
perfect.
for you guys very soon.
That is excellent. So, is that something we can do through VTC, or are you going to go into the classified side that then we have to go into a SIPR VTC if we have to?
Chief, I would recommend we do that on the SIPR side.
Okay.
If we can open that up, because what I want to do is take actual screenshots of NetUSR as we go through the process, so I'm using real scenarios
Right.
of the mistakes that they're making currently in the system.
Okay. So that makes sense. So with that in mind, what that means is as we get closer, I would like to do this on BTC. So as you develop your products to kind of develop your little process within 4ID. When you are ready that you can do this live, we're going to do a BTC, not DCS, we're going to do BTC. And then what we'll try to do is we'll give everyone enough time so they can line themselves up with a SIPR BTC location, because not everyone has BTC, SIPR side. So that gives everyone an opportunity to kind of, coordinate with someone else that has SIPR BTC, and then everyone can kind of get be part of this whole process and kind of learn. And I am going to mention this to Colonel McIntyre as well, because I want him to reach out to the G1s and get the participation from the officer side of the house that are doing strength management, and that we want to make him as good as we want to make everyone else, in the one officer cohort. So keep me posted on how this goes. And then, we'll just we'll work this out and figure out when you can do this class, because we'll go BTC on this one. We're not going to go DCS on this one.
Yes,
How does
sir.
that
And then
sounds good?
one request I would have is if we have other warrant officers that are involved in the net USR process, I don't want to make this just a 4ID effort. If we can open up the communication and let's consolidate efforts and create a product for the entire cohort, then I think we become way more effective. Because I don't, again, I just don't want this to be just solely 4ID.
Okay, good point. So what I'll do is, I mean, with the ones that are right now logged in, listening to this, if you want to be part of this team to develop the Net USR class, please reach out to Ray, so that way it doesn't look it's a 4ID flavor only. And the more the merrier. So I know there's someone from the Virginia National Guard logged in, Sandra. So if you want to be part of this, by all means, you can join. I see some folks from 2ID. If you want to join in, please do so because what this will do is it'll gather the experience from everyone across the board, and then it'll make this product very good for everyone to gain something good out of it. So hey, my friend Ray, thank you so much for putting this together, for kind of coming up to doing part two. We have recorded your session, and I saw no PI, no nothing, so it's going to be too easy to put out there on YouTube once at AG2 once we have it ready. If you want to give another class on something on some other subject, you can reach out, let me know. I mean, you already know how this goes. And you're already battle tested and how to do the slideology for us.
Yes,
So
sir.
appreciate everyone's participation. If you have any additional things that you would like to see us, do some training, live training. I mean, we're gonna do a HR system live training next month again. We have some guys lined up for that. If you want to do some other type of training, just like this, through PowerPoint or through some other medium, just let me know. This is all for you guys. I mean, we're doing this so you guys can get some additional exposure to how other people do stuff and kind of get some insights and ideas so you can improve your way of doing business. Because there's no need to recreate the wheel. We've already had enough wagons going around. So we just got to get on the wagon and roll the same way. So unless you guys have any questions, I'll wait for like 5 minutes unless you have any questions. And if not, then I'll see you next month. I'll see you actually next Wednesday for Mr. Jasinski's HRC update. And then we'll talk soon. Dave out.